Welcome to Podfellas, where it's just regular guys talking about regular things. All right, hey Dave, what's up, man? How you been?
What is going on, man?
Just drinking some coffee here, reading all this stuff about these torpedo bats. When all these different rule changes. Want to get your thoughts on that?
It's like anything else. Is if there was no success with this, no one would care. Uh,
Right.
but it happened that the Yankees went on a crazy tear and hit 15 home runs in 3 games. And that currently, as soon as something like that happens, people cry foul. Um, while they're not the only ones using the bat, they are the ones that seem to be having the most success with it.
Mhm.
Um, and last year, an MIT physicist named Aaron Leonhardt, he was employed with them as their hitting analyst.
Okay.
He's credited with creating the bat, which moved the sweet spot down a little bit when he recognized so many hitters were hitting closer to the trademark. So that's how this came about. And I don't think it would be anything if the Yankees just had a normal start.
Right, and I mean it's one of those things where, like you said, if it weren't the Yankees, if it weren't the amount of home runs, and if it just sort of eased its way into the league, you would see it. But it was such a big impact, literally, opening day right out of the gate, that it had people like, what the hell's going on? Even for the Yankees being the Yankees, right? You expect them to crush the ball, but
Not like,
that's out of control.
yeah.
And we're here in Pittsburgh area, and Pirates are already struggling, but the Yankees are coming in this weekend. I'm going to get the boat ready and just go get about a half a dozen balls in the river, because that's what's going to happen. That short porch. What
Absolutely.
is it like? Is it like 320? I can't remember.
Well,
What
it's
is
short. The Clemente wall in right field is very short.
Yeah.
They made it a little higher. It's actually 21 feet high. They did
Okay.
because of Clemente, the number, because he won
Wow.
21, which is why they did that. That's
Nice.
one reason they did it. The other reason they did it is because it is a short porch there. And yeah, they're going to have a field day. I mean, in 3 games, the Yankees scored 36 runs. I don't know if the Pirates scored that all year last year. So
I mean, I'm telling you,
I'm a huge Pirate fan, by the way. Let me go out and say,
yeah,
I'm not easy
yeah,
being a Bucco fan, but I still am, even though it's a little tough. It's been some lean years.
yeah. We could talk about 6 hours on that. I mean, that's brutal. But and the sad thing is I think if the Pirates even had the torpedo bats, I think that the Pirates had those big orange wiffle ball bats back in the day, they'd still have some issues.
I
Um,
it is. It's been a tough. It's been a tough stretch, and
mhm.
that lose in the opening series to Marlins was brutal. But because they have one of the few payrolls, it's less than ours. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
but it is what it is.
yeah.
However, I was looking, Ellie De La Cruz, Francisco Lindor, other guys, they're also using this bat that looks kind of like a bowling pin if you look at how it
Yeah.
made.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, so there are going to be people coming out saying it's got to be this, it's got to be that. Well, realistically, Major League Baseball has a rule, and I forget the specifics. I think it's 2.61 in circumference or something.
Hmm.
But they have a number that you have to stay within. Bats can't be longer than 42 inches. They have
Hmm.
to have a certain max size barrel. Beyond that, all they're doing is moving some sweet spots around. So is that illegal? I don't know. I mean, it's not like corking bats, not like steroids. They're
Right.
they're figuring a way around the rule. I mean, the same way people talk about the tush push in the NFL should be illegal. Well, it's still within the rules, and until you
Right.
change those rules, like that's going to be legal. It's going to the same thing with this. Until someone says, okay, the end of the bat has to be fatter than the middle or something. Until
Right.
you do that, then this is legal.
Right, and what's going to happen now is everyone's interested in this, right? We're full swing baseball season here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it's up, but out by you, I kind of it's probably similar down this way. Kids around here already have the $300 to $600 composite bats. There's too much money in this torpedo bat thing that I just can't see it going away. Or are they going to do the whole thing where I think you could still use aluminum in college, correct?
College,
Um,
not pro, right?
not pro. So maybe they'll say, okay, you could use it at these certain levels, but there's going to be too much money in this.
Or even in high school, the bats have been limited. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember Easton had a bat that was called a Black Magic, and then Marucci came out with bats, and these bats were coming off like shotguns. I mean,
I remember
you
those.
had skinny guys crushing home runs back then.
Yeah.
People started getting injured, and
Hmm.
put a limit on it. So the bats now do not have the pop that maybe they used to because they are limited uh, in how they're constructed. So for a certain amount of ball speed coming off the bat, which is something they had to do in baseball because the technology was getting ridiculous. I get that now in baseball for the majors, it's wooden bats. So
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know how you govern that. The only thing you can do, you remember in the past, they'd hollow out the end of the bat to take
Yeah.
the bounce out, do different things with it, just to play with the bat a little. Well, this is just that in another way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. It gets people. There's been a lot of talk about it, obviously. But you and I were talking offline about not only the sort of torpedo bats, but just how sports rules, baseball rules in general have changed over the years. Football and how that affects the game, and you either love it or you hate it. And I think you and I were also talking about, like the pitch clock. And just because we're friends and we're on this podcast together doesn't mean we have to agree all the time. But I think we both agree on this. Correct me if I'm wrong. That if you really love going to the ballpark, if you really love sitting down and you've played some sports and you love the psychology and the factors around, the gamemanship of pitcher and batter and catcher and all that, and you sort of take that away just to attract new fans. In my opinion, it takes away some of the enjoyment of the game, because when I go to the ballpark, I never complained about a 4 hour game. In fact, I was always pumped about open inning or extra innings.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, more ball. I mean, the only time I ever got upset was when they stopped selling beer.
Well, yeah, you're paying to go to a game. You're like, well, I don't want it to end early. You know what I mean? You're like, I already paid X amount for parking and the ticket. I don't mind sitting here for 3.5 hours, right? Where
Exactly.
baseball's trying to get it down to 2 hour games. While I understand some of why they did it, there are things that cannot be ignored. Like, in order to do that, they had to get away with. They had to do away kind of with catchers dropping fingers, dropping signals. Batter, the pitcher shaking you off.
Yeah.
Now it's all done electronically with a mic in your ear, and they each know what pitch is coming. They did that
Yeah.
to expedite things. Well, I think there's something to be said for a guy on second base trying to steal that signal. And
Absolutely.
Pete Rose back in the day would put a hand out and that was like if he saw a fastball, he'd put two hands out if it was off.
Hmm.
Well, that's if you're and then you got to change your signals up. That's all part of the fun of that. This sort of sanitizes that a little bit, I think.
It does, and I even remember, again, just our own experience with ball, but the batter would step off and go talk to the third base coach. The third base coach may have been picking up on something like, "Hey, these guys are going to come with a changeup or something." I don't see much of that anymore, if any, really. I
No,
mean,
because you're only allowed one
you,
time out per at bat.
yeah, so there's that too. I mean,
You can only step out of the box and call time once in an at bat.
mhm,
After that,
mhm,
and the other thing people ignore is stolen bases are up 41% because now you can only throw to second to first base for a pickoff twice.
yeah,
If you go a third time and you don't get him, he gets second, right? So now guys are less likely to throw over.
hmm,
People know that they're getting a better jump, and stolen bases are way up. In fact, last year stolen bases were the highest they'd been since 1987. Think about that. It's almost 4 years. That's that's a significant number. Back then, base stealers ran. That's what small ball was in, and then
So I'm trying to think. I know you'll know this. I
that'd
don't
be
want to say it.
Anderson times.
Ricky Anderson. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Because he was, and who was the guy from Major League? Willie Mays Hayes.
Willie Mays Hayes.
Was that right?
Yeah, yeah.
All
Leslie
right.
like Willie Mays Hayes, and it was like, oh, steal 100 bases. Well, in recent years, if someone stole 25 bases, that was a ton.
Hmm.
Well, now we're getting back up to these higher numbers because guys are running again, and that is all part of a pitcher can't hold the ball as long. You can look at the timing. Okay, you're looking at you can see the clock, and you see
Hmm.
the pitch clock down to 3, 2, 1. As a runner, you can get a jump then
Hmm.
because you know that pitcher can't hold it a beat longer to freeze you.
Right.
And these are all things that are playing into trying to expedite things and get more people to watch the game and get people to watch longer. Now, I know a lot of people are largely in favor of the pitch clock because it has helped with uh, maybe making games a little shorter, a lot
Hmm.
shorter actually. But is it really better for the game? I'm not convinced. I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Especially when you start talking about these rules. Okay, fine. You speed up the game on one hand, but on the other hand, you're breaking records and you're comparing those records against earlier rules, and then you get in. Do you open up the record books and there's just asterisks everywhere? It's yeah. I mean, you can make an argument. And look, I know things have to change, and there's look the equipment. I mean, you're a golfer, and just look at drivers and just look at the technology there.
Yeah.
I mean, technology happens. Everything's going to get bigger, better, faster. But I think with baseball, it felt to me baseball was always one of those really organic sports
Yeah.
that you just go and it's just you have a wooden bat and a ball and it's who could ever throw it fastest and hit it
Yeah.
the furthest
I think
and
technology belongs in the game as much as it's becoming.
right.
Because that game, you don't need it. You go to the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico, every every corner there's a ball field, and there's a bunch of kids playing, and they have no electronics, no anything. They're just playing the game. Well, and these are some of the best players in the world, right?
Right.
That's a game that you don't need technology in, and it's
Right.
being shoehorned into it a little bit. Now, it's funny you talk about records and things like that. Like if you ask someone who's the home run king of all time, a lot of people still tell you Hank Aaron, even though Barry Bonds has more homers.
Hmm.
People also rarely talk about when McGwire and Sosa went on that tear that
Yeah.
energized baseball, and McGwire hit 70 homers, and Sosa was like 66. And the old record was only 61, so they
Right.
crushed the record. Well, because of steroids, those aren't even thought about, and none of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. They would have been before. So asterisks in baseball, you could do a lot of things. I mean, Babe Ruth's records were done in 152 games or 150 game 4-game season, 154 games. They added 8 more games in 1961, I believe. Um, well, so when his records get broken, it's like, wait, he did it in less games. It's the same thing
Right.
with pitching. In 1969, the mound went from 15 inches to 10 inches.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's a significant change. Should
Yeah.
there be asterisks then? I don't know. Um, the game's obviously going to change over time and over the years, but I dislike too much technology. It's like you and I talked the other day about the inevitable computers calling balls and strikes.
Yeah. Right.
And what are your thoughts? What do you think of that?
Well, I think I talked about this is that I like the idea of okay, you see the umpire, right, and you're like, all right, I know his strike zone. And as long as that umpire is consistent with that strike zone, you can work with it. It's when the human error comes in, or if like okay, if it's numbers to knees strike, which is pretty the traditional everyone, but now all of a sudden you start calling 6 inches outside the plate a strike, and or a ball if you were giving me that before. I think the consistency is there, but I don't like the idea of that of the balls and strikes being called because again, it takes away that human element, and I think there's a certain competitiveness, even if you feel like the ump's out to get you a little bit.
Yeah,
It kind of it kind of gets you going a little bit, like, hey man, it's us. We gotta go against these guys, and I don't know. I mean, now we're getting into some psychology there, but I think that all in all, I don't want to see that because otherwise, then let's just scrap it and let's just play video games because that's essentially what it's going to become.
it is. The human element cannot be overstated, and while They did this in tennis when they brought Hawkeye in, and if you watch game like you watch a tennis match from the '90s or even 2000s, there's linesmen on every line.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Watch a game now, there's none of them because they went to full computer generated looks, and they can get it to within a fraction of an inch, and
it's wild to see that.
How that they did it, and it was sort of seamless. And they even when a ball is hit and it's out, you hear, "Oh, it's computer generated." No one's yelling that. If say out, the computer will just announce that in the speakers. Mm-hmm. And that seemed to be fairly well received. And I thought maybe baseball would be the same. But then the more I got thinking about it, we talked again about the technology and being brought into it, and there's too much of that. This is another round of that. I think we'd be better off using those resources to keep umpires, hold them accountable, so only the best guys are calling balls and strikes. Rather than bring computers in, let's just make sure the best guys are back there. You get these crews, right? A crew of 4 guys, and they rotate. Okay, so they do 4 games, they rotate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, every one of them guys is not going to be great behind the plate. If you got one guy who's great behind the plate, maybe that's where he needs to be every game.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's just like any job that anyone has ever had. You know, you have your review, right? And here is very simple. You quantify it, and you could say, hey, based on, and you don't have to publish this. You don't have to let the general public see it or know it. But at the end of the year or after every game, right? Say, hey, look, you got an 85%. That's pretty good, or whatever the number they come up with.
Yeah.
And you know, if you keep it within a range, you're going to have some human error. But back to the tennis thing for a second. So it's interesting because I'm okay with it in tennis, but baseball I'm not. And
the same exact way.
And I think I don't know, maybe because that's a definitive point, right? That's a make or break right there.
Sure.
Whereas baseball, you have some more chances to kind of move the ball around and make some things happen. Whereas that, it's like, you know, you volley for how many minutes and you're winded, and all of a sudden you get a nice shot that you think is in, and someone calls it out, or vice versa. Then, you know.
Well, calling balls and strikes, it is so difficult of a thing to do, but some guys are great at it, and the analytics will show that. Angel Hernandez went viral for being a poor umpire. Now, was he always poor, or did he get older and you start to lose some? I mean, just like pro players, well, you get a little older, maybe you're not as sharp, maybe you're not as quick on those calls. Who knows? That's why every year I think the guy behind the plate, you should have to be rated to be behind the plate. You don't just get on a crew and it's like, okay, all 4 of you guys now you'll rotate. You would do first one game. You'll be doing third base. You'll be doing behind plate. Okay, no, only certain guys should be able to do behind the plate, I think, and I think that would help with the game because you'd get to know that umpire strike zone. Teams would, rather than it changing every game. Like if you have a set guys that are calling balls and strikes, you know what they give. You know what they don't give. Mm-hmm. Some guys naturally have a little higher strike zone. Some guys give the black on the corner. Some guys don't.
Sure.
Knowing what your guy gives, the batters know it. As long as everyone knows, and as long as it's consistent,
right,
you don't find a problem with that.
And I think that's the thing, and that's where, you know, kind of bring it back to the bats here, is that consistency. And the Yankees are saying, hey, everyone, you guys could use them too.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, now here's a question. I should have researched this. I don't know if you know this, but do the Yankees own the patent on this? But I think these have been around, though.
Apparently not, because this is not, while this guy's credited for it, there are people saying this is not a new concept. People have been shaping bats since the beginning of time, since the beginning of baseball, playing with different designs. It's just in the forefront right now because this particular design was created. My understanding was there was a player on their team who was getting sawed off all the time, and they created this bat for him, and then other players started using it, and batting practice and liking it, and then more
Right.
guys started using it. And now, like Cody Bellinger uses it, and there's lots of guys that are using this bat now. Well, that's not that unusual to see. I mean, you see how bats are always shaved different, taped different, and
Sure.
hollowed out in certain spots or whatever. This is just another in that. The only reason it's a big deal is because the Yankees are going off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And
there's no way to patent the shape of a bat
no.
because you're just trimming it.
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. Speaking of, there's two things that come to mind. Do you remember the pine tar incident?
But George Brett,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Dude, he came out of that dugout. I have a baseball card somewhere. It shows him just tearing out of that dugout, losing his mind, big chaw in,
Oh yeah,
just losing his mind over that. And was that Billy Martin
it was
that
Billy
called him out of
Martin
it?
that called it after he hit the home run. He
Yeah.
and the pine tar has to be under a certain length on the bat, and I think it's 17 and a half inches or whatever the plate is.
Mhm.
And they held it down to the plate, and the pine tar was longer than the plate, and they
Yeah.
wrapped him up, and Brett comes flying out of the dugout.
Lost his mind.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
As I mean, if you look at his lifetime stats, George Brett is, I believe, underrated. He's one of the greatest.
I do
I
too.
put him in the top 2, 3 third baseman ever to play. And you don't hear about him a lot. And he also stayed with the team his entire career. Who does that? He
Right.
played his whole career with the Royals. I mean, there are very few guys that did that. Tony Gwynn being one of them. You got I think Robin Yount. I think he always stayed with the Brewers. Very few Hall of Famers that stayed with the team like 20 years, particularly on teams that weren't that good.
Right.
But
Right.
but yeah, George Brett running out was great, and the pine tar incident it'll never get old.
No. And then another one that I was surfing around last night. I can't remember. So Yankee was A-Rod. The ump looked at his bat and confiscated his bat. And then Ken Griffey Jr., I think, said, "Here, use mine."
Yeah,
And A-Rod went up and just smacked one.
just crushed home run with Griffey's bat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And like just so those, the whole equipment thing. And of course, who couldn't,
and there's also gamesmanship. I mean, there's a lot of gamesmanship. I mean, how many times did Gaylord Perry get searched for loading the ball up?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
emery boards, all kinds of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
emery boards. Guys were having little pieces of sandpaper in their gloves, and they'd
Yeah.
get a lace loose. I mean, manipulating it is and seeing what you can get away with. I mean, that's been done forever. Sammy Sosa was busted with a cork bat. You remember that?
And
it was
one cork bat.
He hit a home run, or he hit a fly out, and his
It like
bro
busted apart. I remember that.
found it.
And then just somehow, like, didn't someone go in and they couldn't find his other bats. MLB went in there and just grabbed those.
And he claims he used that bat just for batting practice for the fans, and it was an accident. And then when they asked him more about it, suddenly Sammy couldn't speak English anymore. Do you remember that? All of a sudden he was like, "Oh no, okay." He was confused all of a sudden, and we all saw him in commercials and stuff, talking fine. And then when he got busted with that, all of a sudden his English wasn't. My English not too good, and I was like, "Wait a minute. We know you speak English. Quit it." It was
Hilarious. Yeah.
Well, the colorfulness of baseball players, there's something to that. And there's such an art to keeping a baseball fan engaged. And I would say one of the best I ever heard do it was Roy Garagiola. He was an announcer all through the 70s and 80s, and he was so great as a color man of telling stories between pitches that had you hanging on the edge of your seat. Joe Morgan was great at it too.
Yeah.
And there was that. So you're watching a game and there's a pitching change, or the catcher runs out to talk to the pitcher, and these great color commentators would tell you a really great little historical tidbit that was so funny and so clever, and it was seamless. And you didn't mind watching because that was all part of that show. You don't have that now because the game's so quick.
Yeah.
A cameraman can't get into a story because it happens so fast.
Right. And you know what else I love? I love a good manager meltdown every once in a while. I haven't seen one of those in a while.
Mm-mm.
Um, um,
Early
it just
we've read some of the greatest. Him,
yeah, and
those guys all had pretty good ones.
yeah. Sometimes you'll get like the really good ones are like these minor league ball. Sometimes the guys that he just empties the dugout or takes every bag from the or he'll. I've seen a guy like go and like slide into every base, like just loses his mind, and it's beautiful, and the
You
fans
ever
love it.
played McClendon? Was so
Oh yeah,
he,
I remember that.
he stole when he kicked out of the game. He went out and he stole the base and ran
Took it into the clubhouse.
get to the locker room with him. Took it to the clubhouse. Um, what do you make of that? I mean, that's awesome, and the fans there loved it.
Yeah,
That's all part of that's all part of the colorfulness of this sport.
right.
And in baseball, unlike any other sport, you have a lot of time where a lot can be talked about. They can talk about this guy, what he went
Mhm.
through on this comeback, how this happened. So the time in between pitches and things like that, I don't find that as aggravating as some people.
Right.
But I think if you're listening to it on the radio or if you're watching on TV and the color commentator's good at it,
Hmm.
it makes all the difference in the world to me.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Um, a couple other things we were talking about is obviously there's baseball, but even football, and you and I, we were talking about the tush push, and then um, the new kickoff rules. I'm okay with the new kickoff rules. I know you're not a big fan of those.
Don't like it.
It to me, it's with the way these guys are built these days and injuries, I can see why they did it. Um, I agree with you though. It is nice to see a run back, but I haven't seen a run back in a while. So I just think the speed of the game and the head injuries and the different things.
Well,
It's not that big of a deal,
kickers are
but
so much better now. They're kicking the ball through the back of the end zone.
yeah,
That
yeah,
there's that as well. I'll tell you what. I don't like that rule the same way uh, I don't like the 10th inning of a baseball game starting with a runner on second. Okay, I hate that. It's like when we're playing
that's
wiffle
terrible.
ball. I got a ghost runner on second. I hate
Yeah, that's literally, or that's wiffle ball. Like
it. Is it is it's play, well. I feel the same way about these kickoff rules in football. In that
yeah,
you're changing the game. You're taking an offensive play away from
yeah,
the game
that's a good point.
every time, right? And if you have a great kick returner, I remember years ago, uh, the Cowboys and then later the Minnesota Vikings recognized Herschel Walker. They put him back on kick returns because they realized you're going to get 4 or 5 good chances for him to bust one again. And
Yeah,
you have a great kick returner. That's a great equalizer. You take that out of the game. So I don't love it. I mean, I understand why they did it, but I still don't love it.
yeah. I mean, but you make some good points there. It is you're taking it out of the game because at that point it's almost like a waste of time. Just put the ball on the 30-yard line and be done with it, or the 20-yard, or
Right.
whatever it is
I
now.
can kick off then. That's just
Yeah,
you after a touchdown, the other team starts with the ball on the 35 or whatever
yeah,
you do. I mean, you might
yeah,
as well do that then. I mean, at some point, yes, I know you're trying to eliminate contact, but that sport is inherently violent.
yeah.
It's inherently there's going to be hits. There's going to be I mean, they've all but made it impossible to hit the quarterback now. They've done it a lot already.
Yeah.
At some point, it's still football, I think.
Sure. No, yeah. No, those are some good.
But that's my take on it, and I think if you ask every other person, they're going to have a different take on it, and that's what's great about sports. Is,
Yeah, it
is
is.
you're not wrong and I'm not wrong. It's just that that's the way we see it.
Yeah, and that's why you can spend 35, 40 minutes talking about it with your buddies.
Yeah.
The One last thing here, and then maybe we can pick this topic up or several others later. But the tush push, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. Maybe because I hate Philly, but I just think it. I understand, but at what point then you're playing rugby
It becomes rugby.
or
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts on it would be the same as do you remember during the Bears Super Bowl run in '85, and I mean they had all the charisma, they had all the guys,
Fridge. Yeah.
they had the fridge, and there was a play where the runner got stopped, and the fridge grabbed him and lifted him into the end zone, and they said that you're not allowed to do that because you're not allowed to carry another player. So somehow they got around that rule with this because you're not carrying, you're just pushing. In that situation, the runner stopped. The fridge was coming. He was also in the backfield.
Remember, yeah.
He grabbed him and he dragged him across into the end zone, and they said that's not legal. I guess because you're not picking the guy up, you're just pushing. They're making that all legal. But it's a weird formation, and
Yeah, because Jalen Hurts is literally riding on top of those dudes.
but it's
And they're,
undefendable.
you can't.
If you got the right horses for it, you can't stop it. Where the thing is about that is when they used to only do it at goal line, now they do it anytime they need a first down.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's become a pretty powerful play. Obviously, they had a pretty good year with it, and they've had many good years with it. What do I think? I guess until they change the rule, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And then what's the letter of that rule? You're not allowed to push another player on your own team because that's been done forever a little bit, like where the fullback would run into the center and the running back behind him and they all just try to plow through.
Yeah.
Now you're saying, well, no, we're just going to take 8 guys and put them in the box and do it.
Yeah.
Or up 11 or whatever. I don't know. I don't love it. I'd rather see a creative diagram play with an end around sweep or something than see that all. Well, there's nothing exciting about that. That's for sure.
Right. Right.
But I mean, rules are. People always figure out a way around the rules, and then it's up to the governing body of that league to adjust. And will they adjust? There's already talk about it. I mean, Mike Tomlin from the Steelers was adamantly against it and has flip-flopped and has now said he has no problem with it. That's strange. And he's on the government committee and stuff. So he said he had enough time to look at that and has decided, no, it's not. He didn't like it, but the more he examined it, he was okay with it. That's strange to me.
Maybe that's the only way he thinks he can score this coming season.
Oh, well, that's a whole other.
That's a whole other.
That's a whole other segment, that is a whole other ball game.
Good.
But baseball season's here. It's in full swing. Whether you love it or not, there's something inherent about it. The ball being plunked, and I don't know, the organ playing at the stadium. There's something about being there, and I know I'm biased, but PNC Park, I've been to a lot of stadiums. It's still the prettiest ballpark there is, in my opinion. And even though they put out a below average product every year, I'm still going to go and I'm still going to watch. I'm still going to pay $14 for a Yingling beer and a $12 hot dog because I still like going to the ballpark.
I mean, that's what it is. Absolutely. And maybe I'll go see 75 home runs this weekend when the Yankees are in town. So.
I'll tell you, it would be cool to see.
All the fans get a home run ball.
Well, that's one thing about baseball is even if your hometown's not that great, when the Yankees come to town, they sell out. When Boston comes to town, it's big. When the Cardinals are there, it depends on the team.
Guardians are coming in.
Depends on the player.
Yeah.
When Paul Skeens is pitching in other cities, they sell out. People want to see this guy. Well, I think it's the same with when people want to see Aaron Judge. They want to see Stanton. Yeah. They want to see the Yankees in general. And wherever they go, it's a huge, huge it's usually a sellout. I mean, when they were here last time, it was a sellout. I'm sure these are sellouts too. I went 2 years ago to back-to-back Yankee games, and they were both sellouts. It felt like a playoff atmosphere.
Yeah.
And the Pirates couldn't have been further out of the running because this was in August of last year. It didn't matter. People were there to watch baseball and to see these great players.
Yep. Absolutely.
I love it.
Cool. All right, Dave. Well, until next time, we'll we got a few other things we could talk about. I like this idea, these rule changes. We could talk, and maybe next time we'll bring up. We didn't get a chance to chat about it today, but transfer portals, college ball, millionaire athletes, NIL, that kind of fun stuff. So,
Absolutely.
all right, brother. Always good chatting with you.
Until next time,
All right, man. Take it easy.
have a good one.
Thank you for listening to Podfellas. If you are interested in becoming a Podfella, visit our site, podfellas.com, and fill out the request form.